Hey everybody, we are live, and I'm delighted that my longtime friend, and I can say that because we've been acquainted that long, although I haven't had barbecue with him yet or anything like that. But our Alameda County Registrar and the county of Alameda's Chief Information Officer, Tim Dupuis. Tim, welcome to.
Thank you, Zennie.
Thank you for being here. And Tim had an interesting go of it with the elections this year. There's been a lot of exciting outcomes and confusion on top of that. So we're going to get started right away. I promised Tim this is his platform to tell us what's going on, how to understand it, how to think about it. This is quite literally sort of almost a kind of a TED talk and a teach-in, if you will, combined with everything else. All right. So, and we're joined by former Oakland Mayoral candidate Seneca Scott, who's going to type a few questions. Be nice, Seneca, or I will block you. So, just kidding.
All right.
Kidding. Hey, Seneca, you could do me a favor, however, and tweet this out to the others that we are on, because I made a time scheduling error. I put 11:30 rather than 10:30. That's my fault. Okay. So I'm taking the L for that one, as I've taken the L for a lot of things lately. All right. So, Tim, let's start off with, first of all, as you and I discussed, a conversation that Alyssa Victory and I had regarding ranked choice voting and the confusion that was out there with respect to the choices. And this is what she told me when we were talking in our interview. As I go and pull this up right here, right there. I want to know, first of all, what you think of the news that ranked choice voting is not 3 this year, but 5, 5 choices. What do you think about that?
I've been through a lot of shocking things already in this election with democracy and getting on the ballot. So I can't say I'm really surprised, but it's still very concerning of the transparency of what people can expect, what candidates can expect, how we can be messaging and even strategizing our own campaigns in a ranked choice election, knowing that now people are having instructions in a ballot that says put 5 folks in order instead of 3. And I think our public was already having some challenges with understanding the 3 and how to use that ballot already. And so not having enough time now that ballots are coming out and we're finding this out. So it's concerning to say the least. And again, it's another challenge that I'm experiencing and other candidates are on this campaign trail.
Hey, I'm curious to know, as having said that, I find it extremely concerning that the city clerk's office didn't make this a huge public education effort. Am I missing something?
I think it's definitely their obligation to advise us that this is, especially since this is a change, right? That this isn't something we would all be expecting or hasn't been the norm. There should be some really clear, like you said, communication effort, along with the county registrar's office, who is the one who prints the ballots, who prepared them, who drafted them, right? Who knew a long time ago what it was going to look like, that it was going to have 5 and instruction to choose 5 instead of 3. And so having that messaging, even at all of their voter registration events, using the power of our different civic engagement organizations to, again, make sure we're including this as part of the voter outreach, engagement, and registration that's been happening, right, for the past year leading up to this. And now ballots are already being mailed. So look out in the mail for your ballots. I'm number 7, but it's, again, kind of another thing that we just have to shift and be flexible with. I'll stop it right there. Tim, what are your thoughts about, and I think we now see, what the candidates were going through. What are your thoughts about what you just heard?
So ranked choice voting has been being used with Oakland for over a decade, as we've talked about. But it's a question of when we change, first of all, from 3 choices to 5 choices. The first election that we went to 5 choices was in November of 2020. So this is the second time that Oakland has had 5 choices. In terms of the outreach, we have an outreach team with the Registrar of Voters that goes to over 200 community events every year to primarily educate voters, also to do registration drives and so on. And ranked choice voting is part of that effort. In the Oakland area, especially the other ranked choice voting communities. We also meet with the city clerks each year on a regular basis, but especially the ranked choice voting cities. And we have a talk with them about, is there anything in addition to our regular outreach and education effort that they would like us to do for further education. And it's a negotiation or discussion with the city clerks to see if they believe that the community needs anything more from the registrar's office for outreach. So we've done everything that we were asked to in terms of that outreach. And I see that there's some concern about our website saying 3 choices. Zennie, you and I talked about it. The main site is showing 5 choices, but I understand that there might be some other areas that you're finding that we still have some legacy 3 choices.
Yeah.
So if you could send them over to us, we'll make sure that that gets changed. But our main site, as I'm seeing it, is saying 5 choices.
Well, that's the thing. When this originally came about, and I have an interview with Lauren as well, among other candidates, they all said 3. And as we talked about offline, digital media is a wonderful thing. You fix something like that, right?
That's
but,
right.
So to look at the sites now as they are doesn't really help us. And that's why I like to have this video history of when I talk to people way back when, right? Because then you capture the confusion, what was going on, right? And how, first of all, something that I need help with, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Dave McDonald, your esteemed predecessor.
Yes.
And I interviewed, feels like 12 years ago, which I have a video for, but I haven't pulled it up for this. I figured I rely on my what memory I have left is 60.
All right.
Anyway, but at any rate, he said to me that it's enough paperwork with 1 choice, but when you add 3, when you have 2 more, it's more paperwork. Well, I would think it would be more with 5, but talk me down from the ledge on that and how it changed what you have to do, and tell people what you have to do, please.
Right.
Add 2 more to 3.
Yeah. So when you take a look at and I know you're tech savvy, so I'll talk about it from a technical standpoint. The number of choices, the number of choices for the computer is really not too difficult. The original algorithm that was we brought in under Dave McDonald's leadership, that was approved by the Secretary of State, was capable of only going up to 3 choices back then when we implemented it. And yeah, it's over a decade ago, right? In 2018, that equipment was essentially decertified. Sometime around that time it was decertified, and we had to bring in a new system. The new system, because of new capabilities that come in, higher computing levels, they were able to go into more choices than 3. And so we met with all of the city clerks that manage their elections. I guess I want to make that relationship clear too. The election official for the Oakland election is the city clerk, and
Mhm.
we run the election on behalf of the city clerk. So we're essentially, they're our client, if you want to take a look at it that way. And so we meet with them and we run the election the way that they want to. And we have 4 cities now that are ranked choice voting. It's Oakland, Berkeley, San Leandro, and Albany. So the system was was capable of many more choices, and when we brought it in, we sat down with all the city clerks that were impacted, and we showed them different layouts of the ballot, because now it's not an issue of what the computer's capable of doing. It's an issue of the real estate on a ballot, and what's going to be able to fit, what's practical given font sizes that everybody can read, understanding that we have to have multiple languages. So we look at layouts and ask the city clerks, do you want to stay with 3? Do you want to take advantage of the additional capability? Do you want to add some? And unanimously, the city clerks agreed to move it up to 5 choices. So that's how it came about. But in terms of the paper that you're talking about, I think it might be what you're driving at,
Mhm.
is it's not really an issue of handling it in the computer system. It's a matter of how do you present it on a physical paper ballot in a way that can be read, that can be understood, can be explained easily. And so with the layouts, the city clerks landed on the 5 choices, and unanimously that's what we went with, because that's what they asked us to do.
And now Seneca says, I think this reflects some of the sentiment out there. He says, I don't agree education was done. He says, compare the budget to the rollout in 2010, night and day. I don't, so just, showing you that's just a taste of the kind of reaction there's been to all of this, to date. You
Right.
know,
And again, I want to address that, we do spend quite a bit of money on just regular voter education and outreach. And that's regardless of whether it's ranked choice voting. And as I said, that's in those cities that ranked choice voting is a piece of it. We talk about it. We go out to any event that we're asked to go out to and speak to. When it was originally rolled out, the city clerks asked us to go above and beyond that regular education program. And they, again, being that they are a customer of us, we do what they think their community needs. So they tell us, is what we normally do enough, or do we need to do something more? And the amount of education that we've put out there has been the education level that we were asked to through the city clerks. I mean, that again, they are our customer. They're the ones that know their community. They're the ones that drive how much they need for their cities.
now, you going forward, has there been any introspection, or where are we right now with the vote? Because I don't want to get ahead of myself, but has the vote been officially certified now? Because I haven't gotten an email saying that it has or has not.
It has been certified on December 8th. It was certified, and I chose to certify on December 8th because that's the last possible day we could certify. It wasn't because we couldn't have certified earlier. It's because we wanted to give every voter who had issues with their signature on their vote by mail ballots an opportunity to remedy. We call it curing the signature. We
Mhm.
wanted to give them an opportunity, every voter an opportunity to come in and have a way to cure their votes so that their vote would count. So I gave them as much time as I possibly could, which was to certify on the very last day, which was December 8th.
Is there anything that you would like to do if you had a do over that you would like to do differently?
I think the election, given everything that was presented to us to work through on this election, the team did a fantastic job. I mean, there were some very high profile elections on this ballot.
Yeah.
And to say the least, I mean, for a midterm ballot, this was locally a very significant election. And the Registrar of Voters team here in Alameda County did a spectacular job dealing with everything that we had. There's always lessons that can be learned when you're putting on an event of this magnitude. I mean, we are talking about nearly 1 million voters. We talk about ballot types, and since we're doing a TED Talk here, a ballot type is all the different unique ballots. So a ballot in Livermore is going to look different than a ballot in Oakland because there's going to be different races on it. Imagine that we had probably over 200 different ballot types in this election, and we were supporting 14 different translations of that ballot. And the extraordinary number of vote by mail ballots that arrive on election night. I mean, it's quite a tremendous effort from start to finish. But what I'm really driving at is when you put something together at this magnitude, impacting as many people as it is, there's always lessons to be learned. We always, have something of a post-mortem afterwards, where we evaluate any of the tickets, the trouble tickets that came in, any of the issues that we're talking about right now. Certainly this issue of voter education around ranked choice, we'll be bringing that back to our city clerks and having a deep discussion about, okay, is there anything different that we should be doing going forward? So I couldn't say that there would be an event this size ever that we would put on where there wouldn't be some certain amount of measure of things that we are going to learn from and try to do better.
I want to get to this situation that I contacted you about again after the 3 to 5 change, and that has to do with, and it's here. That's the middle of it, but I'll scroll up to the top and then go down. I didn't want you to think that I didn't install what you had said in response, and I thank you for feeding back. But this was Oakland Mayoral. This is the original title of the post, where it seemed that Dominion voting device was used with 9 security problems. You got back to me, and I thank you for that. And I installed it here and explained that the system that you use wasn't the one that was listed in the advisory that was put out by the Office of Cybersecurity and Department of Homeland Security. But you wrote and said here that the Dominion Democracy Seat 510A was used, and I include your email where you wrote, "We have received your references. I believe that you were looking at the requirements for Democracy Seat 5.5. We're on Democracy Site 5.10A, and I was only and I wrote back that I was only going by the advisory that I just mentioned that called for an upgrade to that version that you're using, but then it notes that there's 9 security problems. Upgrade from what you're using to 5.5, but there's 9 security problems at 5.5. I apologize." He said, "But my overall question was, the device you all use, was that tested during that election?" The reason I asked, and we talked about this off camera, is extensively, I think, was that the test that I was able to find, which is different from what exists. Okay. Right. But the test I was able to find online in search was from the Secretary of State's office, and that was 2020. And the reason why these are big deals is, for example, I just got off the phone with my web host because I'm keen to upgrade my WordPress to 8.2, PHP 8.2. And you would say, why is that so important from 8.1 to 8.2? And because the improvements there, not to go too far off the reservation, if you will, but they prevent such things as, I'll put it in colloquial terms, someone trying to inject a photograph of a bear onto your website. Okay,
Right.
I mean, preventing cross-site scripting, and or just someone trying to install code in your comment section, which could then, basically inject images into, and just basically also screw up your server. And folks watching this, a lot of people think that, I just do video, but I spend most of my time doing just that encoding. And some of what I deal with, because we're talking about web platforms, considering, as you know, as well as or better than I do, what you guys are doing. And that's why I was wondering if there was an upgrade done, because as I was talking to, and I want to give a shout out to HostGator and Drake today about what we're talking about. He says there's any millions of people around the world that just want to screw with something. And I'm not using the actual term that he used.
I appreciate that.
No problem. But
Yes.
Right?
No, I know what you're talking about, and I completely understand where the concern is coming from. So the vulnerabilities, and I could see it as you were scrolling through it. It does reference Democracy Suite and ImageCast 5.5 in the advisory. We're on ImageCast 10A, which is a newer version. Similar to what you just said, right? But I think it's important to really understand, again, thinking of this as a TED Talk, understand the architecture a little bit and how it's implemented. So when you're looking at those tests at the Secretary of State site, what the Secretary of State first has to do is certify the version. None of our counties who are on the Dominion Democracy Suite can install the latest version until the Secretary of State goes through their vetting process, and they have to certify that copy. And we don't get the copy in a normal way like you just talked about, like you would for a server. We have to coordinate getting the golden copy, if you want to call it that, the pure copy, through the Secretary of State, through our vendor, and it's a very controlled install. So by the time it gets to us and the process, it's a very protective handoff to us before it gets into these systems. So that's the first thing. So we're on 10A, which isn't any of the doesn't currently show those 9 vulnerabilities, but we are always working with the Secretary of State to try to stay on the latest. I've got a team of people who that's what they do for a living. So they're very good at staying on top of this stuff and staying in lockstep with both the Secretary of State and our vendor. So we know how important that is. The other piece of it, so that's the testing that I think you're referring to, that you're seeing on the Secretary of State site.
That's something I want, because some people hear Dominion and they've contacted me and said, "Oh, I hate Dominion," but I have to give a shout out to Dominion, because they actually put out the advisory in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security saying, "Hey, look, yeah, this is our device, but here are these vulnerabilities." I just want to make that known, that they actually do, monitor and they inform, and so you need to make corrections. Although we're not talking about with respect to 5.10A, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's not a going backwards, that's going forwards, right? That's a 5.10, right?
Yeah,
So
from 5 to 10. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's that testing, and I appreciate the call out for Dominion. They've been in the press quite a bit. I think there's a 60 Minutes piece, if you haven't seen that, that's probably worth watching, with the CEO. But we do have Dominion, and there's reasons for that. But
can you share those reasons real quick? Because someone's going to say, what are they?
Yeah, sure. They're the only ranked choice voting algorithm that's been approved by the Secretary of State in California.
Mhm.
So that's the one that's been certified. It's been given administrative approval. There are two counties in California that run ranked choice voting races. It's San Francisco and Alameda County. And we both use the same system because that's the one that's certified in California.
Didn't go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
So looking at that, those vulnerabilities though, and actually the testing, I really want to drive into the testing that you're referring to. So it all begins with the Secretary of State's, their tech team that does a complete deep dive vetting of the code to figure out that it's ready for prime time. The election officials, the registrars of the state, there's 58 of us. I believe at this point, the largest majority of the counties are running the Dominion system.
Yeah, 40.
Yeah. So that's most of us. We can't install any version until it's fully vetted and certified by the Secretary of State. Then when it comes to us for an election, I'll talk about, because you were primarily focused on the image cast X's. Can I drill into what those are? Is that
yeah,
okay?
absolutely, because that's actually mentioned on the website, Secretary of State. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
please.
we call it an ICX for short. The ICXs, I'll again use some of our technical terms, but they're a ballot marking device, and they're standalone. So one of the concerns is it connected to the internet? It's not connected to the internet. They're standalone devices.
Just for the lay person, they're going to say, "What's a ballot marking device?" Could you be so kind as to explain?
Yeah, I'll talk it through. So in a traditional sense, when you go to a poll, we would hand you a paper ballot and you'd have a pencil or a pen, and you fill in your bubbles on for your races. So ballot marking device is a digital display, a heads-up display like a computer screen, and it brings each of the races that you're going to vote on, and you touch on the screen what choice you want to make, and then when you complete it, you can review it on the screen. But when you're finally done, you hit "I've finished voting," and a printer next to the digital display actually prints out your physical ballot, and so that's why it's called a ballot marking device. You're doing your marking on the screen, but then it prints out a physical ballot with your choices for review. And you and I talked about this offline, but the ICXs, or the Image Cast X, is a different device than what we had with the previous voting system. So the previous voting system had a memory card in it, and when you cast your vote on the screen, your vote was stored to the memory card in the device. And for the voter to verify, we called it a voter verifiable printout. It had a printer on the side, and you could see your votes on the printer, and that was a way, and we kept all those printouts from the old system so that you could compare any vote to make sure that the memory card and the printout matched. So that was the old system, which isn't a ballot marking device, right? Because it's burning your choices into a memory card, and then we're uploading the memory card. We don't do that anymore. We're 100% paper based. So the digital display that you see at a vote center, you're marking your device, you're marking on the device, you're saying, "I'm done, I'm ready to cast my vote," and the printer next to it prints it out, and now you have your physical ballot. Nothing is stored on the Image Cast X at all. And so you can review the printout and see what it is that you voted on. And you can assure yourself that yes, that is how I voted. If it isn't how you voted, you can go to the workers and they can abandon that. They can dispose of it. They can get you back into the system so that you can go in there and do it the way that you want to make sure that your vote is the way you want it to be. So again, it's an assistance for putting your physical ballot together as opposed to it going to a memory card. So hopefully that helps with some of the reassurances around the security, because it's a standalone system. And so that was my explanation. Sorry, it was long-winded, but that's my explanation of what a ballot marking device is.
And because I understand, and what I've read is that basically one has to make absolutely certain when you're checking in terms of doing your mitigations that there's no internet connection set up,
Correct.
right? So that somebody can, well, try to do, among other things, cross-site scripting, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So those systems are standalone, and before they get deployed out to the vote centers, we have to go through what's called a logic and accuracy test. And so all the devices are tested with a something that we know what the results should be. So as we're going through, we have a test deck, is what we like to call it. We have a deck of, this is how we're going to test it. This is what the votes are that we're going to test on the system. And when we take a look at what it's reporting as results, it should match what we said it should. And so every device, it goes through that, and in addition to that, as part of the getting prepared for the election, we also do that test. We show the public that test in what's called a public LNA, or a public logic and accuracy test. This year, and for the large elections, it's been pretty consistent. The grand jury participates in that with us, and we go through on a couple of our systems with the grand jury, showing them what our logic and accuracy test is. We do a logic and accuracy test live on the ImageCast X's, but not only for them, we also test our whole scanning system. So we've talked about the ImageCast X, which plays an important role, but we also have, once the ballot gets to our central count, those ballots get put through a high-speed scanner, which, again, using technical terms, it's called a high pro. They scan about 200 ballots per minute. They're pretty fast, and so we scan the ballots through. We scan a predetermined test deck live with the grand jury through, and the grand jury assists us in validating that the equipment has all performed and shown that its results are printing out as expected.
If I may, is it possible to get a kind of a report of when these actions were taken with the grand jury so that the public can review that?
I believe the events are online, but no, we can provide that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, because that's something that I think people would really, really love to see. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Howard. Did you want to continue, by the way?
Well, I think that's it. I mean, that's and it's not something that was unique to this election. Every single election, this is how we prepare. Every single election, for the ImageCast X's, the election obviously has to be uploaded into the device so it knows what races are being voted. So we first upload into each device the election, and then we go through this logic and accuracy test and validate that the equipment, for a lot of different reasons, that it's showing the results it should, making sure it's calibrated correctly, all of the things that we need, because it is a physical device. We want to make sure it's running properly. We want to make sure it's got the battery life it needs, the whole thing. We're deploying a computer device, right? So we want to make sure that everything is working properly when it gets to that vote center.
Now, before I get too far, I would be remiss if I didn't The Seneca asks, he says, can we challenge, I presume, the vote still? He says, it appears Oakland is deleting footage and forging timestamps. How did this play a part if proven? I don't quite know what he means.
Thank you. I didn't understand that.
And you know, but have you heard any claim about this? And maybe Seneca can send me a text or something and clean it up, or I can clean it up later for you and send an email. You know, just
why don't we do that?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we'll do that one. Cool. Let me get to this matter that I talked with you about on camera. It's a little unexpected to read that.
Unless it's a little hard. My eyes are getting old.
Well, you know, DC Comics is looking for a new Superman. So if your eyes can do it, right? Or Henry Cavill, you know, they pushed him out of there. I thought he did a great job myself, but oh well. I guess James Gunn, who doesn't live too far from here, by the way, has different ideas. But I digress. What I wrote here was I find it very concerning that this is. Let me scroll up just to be fair. This is what we talked about, and I'll read it so that I don't leave anything out. I said that back here. I said Councilmember Taylor started out with 41,252 votes to Councilmember Towell's 39,654 votes for first choice votes. But when ranked choice votes were added, that changed to 56,841 for Shang Tao versus 56,161 for Councilmember Taylor. But what's interesting is what is behind the reason for Chang Tao's rise. An outsized number of ranked choice voting votes for Shang Tao from fellow candidate Alyssa Victory. Now, of Alyssa Victory's 14,047 votes, 8,378 went to Shang Tao. This is not the latest run, okay? So if anybody's looking at that, okay, this is not the latest run that was done a week ago. Just FYI. All right. But that does not damage what I'm about to ask, as you know. But I'll continue. And that was almost three times what Ignacio de la Fuente received from Alyssa Victory is one example, or about 59.64% or 60% of the total ranked choice voting votes Ms. Victory had to give. Why did that happen? And then I went back and I explained that in 2010, Rebecca Kaplan and Jean Quan famously teamed up to run for mayor of Oakland in the first year ranked choice voting was used. They campaigned for months. The final outcome was that Jean Quan got 2/3 of all second place votes, and the spread was directly attributable to their team up. And I refer to my interview with City Attorney John Russo, where we talked about the impact of that team up on the election outcome. And I have to actually fast forward to go back here a bit, which should be there. If this buffering would stop. If it doesn't, I'll just simply go ahead and explain what he said, because it looks like I'm not going to get any love from the buffer gods. So let me just stop that. What John had said was that at that time, Don Parada was the front runner. He received 35% of the vote. You might remember this. I do. Yeah. And John famously said, you know, why this isn't coming up is whatever, but he said, look, in this video, he says, look, Zennie, the only way that Jean Quan can win is she got 2/3 of the second place votes, and that ain't happening. Well, it happened the next day. And he called me, he goes, Zennie, take that down. It's wrong. I said, what are you talking about? It's not wrong. You're a genius. And I write here, this time in 2022, the situation is different. Shang Tao and Alyssa Victory did not campaign together for months. And on top of that, I asked Alyssa Victory if Shang Tao was her second choice, and she said, quote, no, Greg Hodge was, unquote. But we both agreed that perhaps it was Shang mentioning that Alyssa was her second choice. But if that were the case, then Alyssa Victory should have picked up a large number of Shanghai ranked choice votes, but that never happened. And what did happen, from my perspective, numerically, was that a shockingly uniform pattern of number percentage of votes was transferred from Lissa Victory to Shang Tao. 59.64%, rounding to 60%. That was true for the most recent run and the one the day before it. On that November 17th day, I vlogged Shang got 6,475 votes from Alyssa Victory, or about 60% of the 10,882 votes she had to give. That same percentage appeared yet again, it was actually about 59.5%, yet again, for the same transfer of votes from Alyssa Victory to Shang Tao on November 17th too. Moreover, the Alyssa Victory, was given the majority of her vote, giving the majority of her votes to Shang Tao is in a giant-sized batch, is a pattern I noticed from the second day of ranked choice voting runs up to Friday. Okay, while I did not check the percentage then on the second day, I would not be surprised if it came out to be about 60%. And these aren't runs I can go back and go into your system and check. I have to vlog them, and I vlog most of them, but not all of them. And I noticed this anomaly a couple of days before I started to really zero in on it. Hence, but I did mention it in those previous videos. But I digress. And I wrote in this interview with Alyssa Victory 2 days ago, and I'm not going to play it. He says, at the 5:30 mark, I note that she gave over 58% of her shareable ranked choice votes to Shang when I presented the run from Wednesday, November 16th. That's just less than 1%, far less than 1% difference from Thursday to Friday. Note that Alyssa does admit that Greg Gotch had her as number 2, but says that people can vote however they want. That's what she says. For me, the point is, Alyssa's people had a weird pattern of picking Shang 58 to 59% of the time through the entire run. And then I go on to make sure this hits home intellectually. All right. I find it very concerning that the same 59.64% or thereabouts, rounding the 60% percentage of votes, was shared from Alyssa Victory to Shang Tao for each of these runs each day, because you were releasing these runs by email daily.
That's right.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but in my opinion, that looks fishy. As if someone were pre-picking votes for Shang using a code that broke off roughly 60% of the votes and dumped them into Shang's column on a spreadsheet. One should expect an uneven or non-linear pattern. This one is far too machine-like. And then I write, why the uniform outcome on a per-run basis? That's to be investigated. It's way too weird, especially since Shang was not Alyssa's second choice, and their names are not even next to each other on the 2022 Oakland election ballot. And then I continue and I write, I want to make sure you understand the gravity of this problem. First, we presumably have votes counted each day for each candidate. Second, one should expect that the percentage of those new votes counted and shared in ranked choice voting to be different for each day of the vote count, right? In other words, they're different each day, but they come out to 59% on the end, okay? Right? Third, that's where the problem comes in, the vote. The percentage of those new votes counted and shared in ranked choice voting from Alyssa Victory to Shang Tao is, for all practical purposes, nearly the exact same percentage each day. That makes no sense at all for that pattern to turn up 3 to 4 times in a row, unless, in my opinion, it was predetermined. But that's what happened. Your response, Tim.
All right. So let's talk about ranked choice voting and a little bit about our updates. I think the comment that says, that maybe have been how they campaigned, and that's what they may have asked their people, their supporters, to choose as their second vote. But people are allowed to vote how they want to vote, right? That's they're independent. So, I've been doing this for a while, as you know, and I've seen elections where it follows essentially a straight line on the percentage. And I've had people who say, well, that's how all elections should run. We should see the early votes on early votes, and what we post on election night. We should be able to do like a statistical sample. Back from our statistics classes. We do a random sample, and that small percentage should just straight line project out at that rate, and that's how we should see what the outcome is going to be. I've seen some elections where that seems to be the case. It follows a straight line. I've also seen some elections where
voting?
For any voting, right?
I mean,
Any
for ranked choice. That's why I say for ranked choice.
No, I'm just saying in general. Sometimes the early votes are mimicking what the rest of the votes come in at. Sometimes the early votes are not representative of what the later votes come in at, and we see divergence. So I've seen both cases, and I've seen arguments. You can imagine we hear people evaluating the elections in all sorts of different ways, and they expect to see things following patterns. Well, it isn't a lab. It isn't following, a predetermined pattern. Voters are voting the way they vote.
But I have to ask because I don't mean to be adversarial. Okay.
I understand. I understand.
But Tim, it's weird to have the same percentage. If you and I are counting votes daily, and it's ranked choice, and these are transfers, right? Because it's ranked choice, we have to throw out the common elections because they don't apply. And my point is, because the obvious question comes up. Well, can we look back at the process and re-review this information as it came in to see how it's actually transferred, right?
Yeah.
Because again, I have never ever seen that. And what's the statistical chance of it being almost exact every single day that you're sending runs, sometimes twice a day?
Yeah. So I haven't. Okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't dived into the specifics. So I asked you to send me your numbers, and I know you said you'd send me some screenshots. What I did do the first time you asked about it, as you recall, I sent you what I could see as the first round choices. And we did see a change in the number of votes. We saw a change in percentage for each of the different candidates on the first round. I haven't I haven't had the time to dive into the question that your observation. But again, I can't really answer it. I'm not equipped to answer it. I'd have to take a look deeper. But I have seen the patterns go straight and not change much. I've seen the patterns change. Again, we're dealing with a lot of different elections, and we have to take a look at, in those updates, how many votes we were really talking about as well. So again, I don't want to hypothesize without actually having a chance to do an evaluation, but if we're dealing with a small number of votes from update to update with those particular candidates, we may not see a large change in percentage either, because there may not have been a large number of new votes.
Well, and not to be, I want to just editorial. Seneca, I'm not here to discuss the city clerk issue. That's not fair to Tim. It's an entirely separate issue for which I need to have the city clerk here to explain. Okay. Tim doesn't know about that. I don't think so. No, I know he doesn't. I'm being jocular. Okay.
Okay.
But my point is, now back to the path, as they say. I want to emphasize this. It's not that there's a difference. It's the fact that it's, for practical purposes, no difference each day.
From a
And
percentage
yeah,
standpoint, right? I mean, the number of votes did increase. It's just that the percentage didn't
the
change
percentage, the
dramatically.
percentage transfer is frighteningly the same. Now, again, if it were okay, 5% difference, 10%, you have a difference. You expect that, right?
Hmm.
Because it reflects, a choice. I'm not talking about that. And that's where a lot of people get it wrong. I am talking about the fact that this thing comes out as almost the same each and every time. And it's like Bugs Bunny is back there basically with his carrot, fooling around with things.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I can tell you nobody's fooling around with things. The system is on an isolated system. It's been tested. It's been certified by the Secretary of State. The algorithm that we use for ranked choice voting, as I said, isn't just being used here. It's the same one being used over in San Francisco. So um, uh, now the question is, you know, can we explain the anomaly? Um, I don't know. We'll have to take a look. But my explanation for it would be is that that's how our voters voted. It may not have come out with what you've expected, but that is what the voters have chosen, and that's how the votes were distributed. Um, so, I mean that is going to be my answer. It's that
and again, that's
we reflected the transfers the way that the voters voted.
see, again, in my opinion, and it really is that when it all comes down to things. It's my opinion
Right.
regarding the data run. Okay. But in my opinion, it's not a matter of who the voters chose. Again, I say this and I want it to hit home. You and I can count votes every single day. One day Shane gets 80% of what Alyssa got sent over. The next day it's 20%. And we go through this over a 5-day period and it averages out to be 59%. You know what I say? Bravissima. Awesome. Right? But to have the same damn percentage every single day, right? It's like, and I'm sorry to, make your ears do that.
Well, I do. As you're talking it through, I do want to make sure that maybe I want to make sure we're still on the same page.
Sure.
Yeah, let's talk it through just a little bit, just
Yeah,
to make sure
absolutely.
we're on the same page,
Yeah.
because um, the run of ranked choice voting at the end of each day is exactly that. It's essentially a simulation. I've been trying to actually look for the best. You froze on me, Zennie. Are you still there?
I'm still here. No, I
Okay.
count in my head and it gets kind of like,
Okay. I've been trying to figure out what the best way to call it, because it's not official, right? It's at that point in time with the number of votes, we run the simulation and it shows if this is where we stop the election, this is how the ranked choice algorithm would report the votes that we've captured so far.
so I'm confused.
Yeah, that's where it gets a little interesting. You mind if we kind of unpack that a bit?
I would appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So each time we do an update at the end of the day, uh, we start the ranked choice voting algorithm over again with everything that we had tallied up to that point plus the new. So it's not like we're just tallying the new votes and tacking them onto the ranked choice algorithm. No, it's what we've been asked to do, because there's different ways that we could do this. We could wait till we get every vote counted. Nobody likes this. We could wait till we have every single vote counted and then post the results and then run the ranked choice voting algorithm once, and everybody would see how it works. But we kind of live in a time where everybody wants to say, well, where are we now? Right? We live in this, we live in this kind of I need an instant update. Where is it now? What's changed? We like our I'll use our sports analogies, ESPN ticker. We need to know what the score of the game is right now. Is it going to get flipped? How close are they at this point? So we enjoy that. That's what people want. They're looking for, with the way that we're getting so many votes in by mail and so close to election day, you can see that it's taking us longer to get to the final vote. So people are, well, what are they going to post today? Or what is the new posting going to look like? Has something changed in the race? So we've got that setting. So ranked choice voting, the algorithm goes against every vote that we have in the system at that point in time. So, it's not like I freeze what the last update was. We erase that from the previous day. That was a snapshot of if I ran the algorithm yesterday, this is what the race would look like.
Can you explain what it means to run the algorithm? Because it sounds to me like you're saying it's a simulation, and you did use the term simulation.
I did that. I'm trying to from the standpoint of voter education. I'm trying to, because algorithm seems so computer, right? And I've been told that maybe simulation is a better way to put it, because it's not the final results until I certify, right?
Well,
So
except here's the thing, though. As a guy who built a computer model of the Oakland A's, which could be used in the classroom from 2003 to 2010, when Michael Bean killed my game, shame on him. But that's another story entirely, okay?
you'll have to tell me about it.
Yeah, simulations are algorithms.
Correct.
I built an algorithm to model what happens with ticket consumption with respect to economic performance in the model, right? And go on and on and on. All right, there's 946 equation sets. Okay, point I'm making is it's essentially the same, but what we're talking about here aren't people. We're not talking about robots. We're talking about people who cast a vote and they made a choice. And to my mind, that's something that shouldn't be simulated. That should be just actual. Boom, boom, boom. And we should have a real-time able way of counting it. But it sounds like to me you're saying we don't have that.
Yeah, so what we have is, because we at that point in time don't have all the votes in the system, right? We're still counting votes. So let's say it's Monday and we're at 5 o'clock, and I want to give people a snapshot of where everything is at that point with what it is that we have counted so far, right? So for all of the traditional races, they're going to get where they are with the first count, because there's not choices, right? So for the yes no measures and so on, we're going to see how they're doing, and are they close, are they getting closer? So we're comfortable with that, right? Now it's an algorithm, so we have now got so many votes in with all of the different choices. So Monday we have a certain number of votes in. Well, so that's now in the system. And the next step, since you understand code, is, okay, we've got it in the database. We now have all of those votes to that point in time in the database. Have the ranked choice algorithm, which is another program, call it an app, run it against that data so that we can post, given what we have in the database right now, what would the results be? And so then when we get to Tuesday, now we've added a certain number of additional votes into the database, right? We've been able to scan more, and we then we've got the database with a new set. I mean, it's got the ones that we had on Monday plus some additional ones, and we run the algorithm or the app against that database, and we say, now Tuesday, ranked choice voting against what's in the database now would look like this.
Yeah.
So if there's not a whole lot of new votes added into that race, then as we start to get more votes, the percentage is probably not going to change as much, right?
Yeah. Question.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that there's an algorithm that's running against the database implies the existence of an error term. Has anyone?
An error term?
Yeah. In other words, since you're not actually manually sitting there and counting votes as they're split, all right, mechanistically, all right, it begs the question, is the algorithm properly operating to represent what you and I and a bunch of other people would do, which is basically sit down and hand count these votes. Okay, Alyssa's vote goes to Shang. Alyssa's vote goes to uh, Peter Liu, or
Yeah.
you're right. You get the call, and
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. The the algorithm again, and I'm going to go back to our discussions at the beginning. There's some very smart people up at the Secretary of State that have evaluated, tested, and certified that. I keep calling it an algorithm. I just want to make that's what we call it. You want to call it
a
an
lot of people do.
application. You want to call it a program.
Sure.
But the Secretary of State has, fully vetted and certified that program that we use, just like they've certified the ImageCast X, just like they've certified everything else in the system. And they've said that it tests and does exactly what you said. If we did it manually, we would come out with the same outcome as what the algorithm is doing against the data in the database.
But it begs the question, though: did anybody do that kind of evaluation for the device as used for this election? Because here's why I say that. I've been at this matter quite a while, and whatever label you put on who does what is like, okay. It's the process and the math. That's all I care about, the process and the math.
Correct.
And that's what I'm trying to drive home with everybody. Stop thinking about politics and left, right, and all this stuff, and start thinking tech, because this digital divide is going to wreck you if you don't pay attention to it and start asking detailed questions. It's not an insult of you at all. You're a great person.
No.
I'm talking about what seems to me to be a question that needs to be asked even at the level of the Secretary of State.
Right.
Hey, did you evaluate this particular device against a real-time equivalent of you and I sitting down and actually counting? Because if there is a difference, Tim, that is an error term. And it sounds like that exists.
It does exist. Yeah, the Secretary of State has gone through the level of vetting, I believe, that you're talking about.
Okay. But you're not certain. But you're not certain.
No, I am certain that they've gone through the vetting.
Okay.
And then we have our logic and accuracy testing, which, gives some degree of testing as well at the local level. And then we have our 1% manual tally that we do. And I think you're familiar with that. We randomly select 1% of all votes, and we hand count that 1%. And we report that up to the Secretary of State. And for this election,
ranked choice voting, though, because we're talking about ranked.
And even for the ranked choice voting. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Because again, it's weird. It still needs to be checked that you could have a near exact same percentage coming out every run. I don't know. There's this popular saying, who does that?
Well, Zennie, I understand your concern. I'm telling you what safeguards are in process. In place.
Out then. You agree it needs to be checked out.
You'll send me what you have. I understand what you're talking about. We'll take a look at it. I'm very confident that the system is doing it properly, that it's counting properly. But we'll we can take a look. Send what you have.
Because see, what you should be able to do, right, is you should be able to go back and reevaluate the run again and say, if it's possible to do, say, what did it do here?
Well, what we've talked about, Zennie, I think, as well, is we've made the cast vote record. And we talked about that, and I'll just describe what that is.
Well, you were going to send me the information.
I'm sorry about that. I can send you the cast vote record.
See, we both were supposed to send each other things, right?
It's been busy, Zennie, okay? So the cast vote record is every single vote as we've recorded it in the database. So that's on request. That's publicly available. We can give that out, and you can see what the recorded choices were for every vote. So it's not just us looking at it. That's, for full transparency, that's available so people can take a look. If they want to run it through their statistical analysis, they can take a look at it. But that shows how all of the votes were cast in all of the different choices.
Yeah, that and on each day. There's a
I
date.
don't know that I think I'm not sure that it shows a timestamp. I can't answer that. We'll have to take a look. I wouldn't want to on camera say it without knowing it.
Yeah, because something. Yeah, because that's I'm really interested in why that same percentage for each run came about.
I understand what you're driving at.
Yeah, I'm not sure that what you're sending me will get at that.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know if we're going to be seeing that through the cast vote record.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is that the safeguards that
we have a problem.
I don't know that we have a problem, Zennie. We have to check into things to see what's going on. You have an observation. We need to take a look at it. So I don't know that it indicates that we have a problem.
Well, I hate to press you on this, but I mean, I'm sort of working backward. You agree that that anomaly sounds unusual and it should be looked at. You said that, right?
No, I believe I said that we can see a lot of different things. I said that we will take a look at what you're talking about to the extent that we can.
But here's the thing, though. Again, understand if you and I are counting votes every single day, and at the end of our vote count, we should expect a significant percentage difference in vote transfers from one day to the next, even at different times during that day. But to get the same percentage, Tim, the same percentage is impossible.
So I don't know that I can agree to that, Zennie.
Okay, so give me an example. Give me an example that proves otherwise.
Well, so let's take a look at.
Seriously, because at some point you have to just kind of lean into the logic, or if you want to put our Star Trek hat on, what is the logical expectation that produces a pattern, as Mr. Spock would ask. One of my favorite character in history. Okay, well, hopefully yours should be in this instance. All right, but it absent an explanation straight away, which you don't have. Okay,
I haven't had a chance to dive into your question, right?
Right, which you don't have. It means that we have something, just by your admission right there, that has to be looked into. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So, so we can take a look at it, but I'm very confident that we're reflecting how the voter voted. So I'm very confident that the system is working the way it's supposed to. I'm very confident that the votes were transferred the way they were supposed to be transferred. We do get questions. So
right. I'm not concerned with how the voter voted. I'm concerned with this mathematical pattern. If it comes out, we analyze it, and hey, maybe there was a difference, right? Okay, and then the vote came out the same. Okay, fine. But the fact that there was a difference versus what was reported is a problem unto itself. I am not talking about who won the election. I am talking about a mathematical impossibility. I want that made perfectly clear. That's what I'm saying. Perfectly clear. Clear as a bell. That's got to be checked out because, look, everybody should want an election that looks like, hey, look, this is exactly what happened. And when you start using different formulas and programs, as we've talked about, sometimes if you don't properly test those formulas and programs, you don't know exactly how they're working under each circumstance.
Yeah, and I keep saying I'm confident that the algorithm, the program for ranked choice voting has been tested, and that we've used it. We're not the only ones that have used it. San Francisco is the one that is also using the exact same program. So we're all testing it. We're all looking at it. But the Secretary of State ultimately is the institution that has vetted it, has approved it, has certified it as saying that it is operating properly.
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing wrong with us taking a look at the concern, but everything that I see says that the system is working as programmed, it's doing what it's supposed to, and the outcome would be the same if we did it by hand.
because in the case of San Francisco, you're saying they're using the same material, but I found a device. I apologize. Come on, Zennie, get your act together. But I've run across a document where they were actually considering using a new system of voting systems. Not Dominion, but apparently that didn't go through for some reason. This is a recent development. Do you know anything about that?
So I don't want to speak for San Francisco. I do know that they have an election commission that's been looking at things such as developing an open source system. I know that that's been one of the things that they've looked at in the past. I think that might still be one of the topics that they have been discussing. But I haven't been watching it.
So what do you think? It begs the question: what do you think about having an open source system for us, for Alameda County, for Oakland?
Well, first of all, open source keeps, they brought it to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State is not approving it.
Why is that?
I really don't know why, and I'm not educated enough in the what goes what has transpired in terms of conversation around that. So right now, what our focus has been on.
As friends who delve in this, we should explain to people who don't know what open source is. What's open source? I mean, for me, open source is being able to go in and build my own Twitter, based on build my own Twitter platform, because I know how they did theirs and I can replicate the PHP code, which actually I did one day. It's called telling.me, but I couldn't get Michael Downing to put 1 million into my thing. But anyway.
All right, Zennie. I guess my definition of open source would be, to write a program, you have to write computer code, and most of the computer code, when it gets delivered to the end user, has been, I'll use a technical term again, it's been compiled to the point that you really don't know how they wrote it. It's sensitive, it's proprietary. The company itself protects it like it's gold. As you said, you're probably not going to get the Twitter code. I don't know if that's public or not, but you know what I mean. You're probably not going to get Microsoft.
It used to be. That was the days of what was called Identica, and then Twitter killed it.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's generally companies would protect the raw programming that a programmer does, as it's intellectual property. It's what makes them their money. Open source is we have that code openly available to the public. So the public can see the original code before it's been compiled to something that's been used. Right now, all of the election systems that have been approved for California allows for the companies to protect their proprietary code. So we don't see the original code. We do trust the Secretary of State and the federal government, who does the vetting of our election systems. They do the deep dive. They've signed the non-disclosure statements and whatever is required in order to properly vet the systems. So that's the agreement that they have in place with the companies that produce our election system today. So there's the discussion around open source has been around for a while. It's an interesting topic. I have to say, from my standpoint, I have to focus on running a lot of elections. So as far as my bandwidth's concerned, I focus on what systems are we allowed to use and how do we get our elections run.
Hey, I know that you can't stay on here forever, so let me ask,
No, it's been a fun conversation, though.
let me ask you a quick question. What do you think about the NAACP's call for a recount, and how does that have to happen?
Yeah, I've read the same things that you have read. There was a 5-day period after where I certified the election on December 8th that any registered voter is allowed to request a recount. Now we got, on the 5th day, we received around 10 requests. And so it's not that difficult to ask for a request. We have some documentation on how to do it.
The county website?
The county website, or people call us. We have a white paper that we can provide. So there were a number of people who were asking what the process was. This is their right? This is again part of a transparent election process. I have absolutely no issues with somebody asking for a recount. That's why we're here. We're running a clean election, and a recount is something that the election code calls out, that the voter can do this. So it's absolutely their right, and it's absolutely something that we're here to do if the public wants to ask for a recount. So they can. They do have to pay for it. That's been in the news. The cost has been discussed. But as I said, we had about 10 different. What's that?
Is it $100,000?
It's a price per day, and I'm sure it's out there by now. We're quoting the way that we've priced it out. Let me give you some idea of what kind of labor is behind it. We're talking about a manual process that's being requested. Again, since we're kind of diving into the weeds a little bit, if you'll bear with me for a second, maybe it will help.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to sound like computer terms again. With the way the votes are coming in by mail, and they're so random now, if we were dealing with traditional voting as we used to know, say 20 years ago, where most of the votes were done at the polls, and you were assigned to a specific poll for your precinct, the votes are coming to us pretty much prepackaged, right, in precinct order. Right, the vast majority of them are coming in precinct order. Now with everybody voting by mail, they're coming into us randomly, right? They're not sorted. They're coming into, and we have to go through as part of our processing of the vote, we have to go through right now a manual sort, and imagine hundreds of thousands of envelopes coming in, and you have to put it into some sort of order. It's like 52 card pickup trying to put the deck of cards back together in order. So we do the best that we can, but they get boxed up in groups of about 500 votes, and those boxes can have many different races in them, but our database knows which box has which races in them. So when we're preparing for a recount of the mayor's race, we have over 1,300 boxes that we have to pull, and then we have to go through each one of those 1,300 boxes, and out of the 500 ballots in each of the boxes, we have to find the votes that were for the mayor's race. So there could be others in there. So, right, it's kind of mixed together. So that
You
took
find a needle in a haystack at times,
a
basically.
little bit, right? But we know how many votes are in each box, so we have to find those needles, right?
Mhm.
Because we're being asked to recount a specific race. So that takes about 60 people to do that in a timely fashion, and then to do a hand count. I'll talk about a hand count table. We have tables of teams that do the hand count. So you have one person who's a caller. They call out on each ballot, and we do them one race at a time. We call out, the candidate that we're counting. So we go Taylor, 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 and then we have two tally people at the table with two separate tally sheets, and they're marking Taylor, 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 and they call out every 10 times. They say, now I've gotten to 10, now I've gotten to 20, and they have to stay in sync. So in other words, a team is a team of 3, and in order to get through this roughly 130,000 votes, it's going to take at least 12 to 15 of those teams counting. So you see, it's labor intensive. Plus the supervisory team that goes along with it. So, I mean, that's the teams themselves. Then you layer on some of the oversight that needs to be there. So between the retrieval from the 1,300 boxes and it's, as I said, it's a highly labor intensive process for a manual count. It's not that we can't do it. Trust me, we know how to do it. We're very good at it. So the cost is going to be $21,000 a day.
Okay.
And so somebody, and it's gonna, we're starting, we've sent out overnight mail to all of the people who are interested. We've told them what the price tag is per day. And everybody wants to know how fast it's going to be. Well, the teams can go very, very fast, but we're doing this on behalf of the people who have asked for a recount. And so some of this is also dictated, the speed is somewhat dictated by the people who've asked for the recount. If they ask us to slow down, we'll slow down so they have more time to, look at the ballots that they're interested in looking at.
Well, to be sure, we're talking about Oakland or just in general in terms of the number of people who've asked for a recount?
I'm talking about, we've had 10 people ask for a recount for the mayor's race in Oakland.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, and all of them have been notified of what I'm telling you right now.
Okay.
And they've been notified that we are going to start this on Friday, this week.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the
tomorrow.
Correct. Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's been a long week, Zennie.
Well, tell me about it, my friend.
We'll be starting on Friday, and we also have to notify all of the campaigns impacted because they can have representation regardless of whether they're paying for it or not. All of the campaigns can be present and they can be participating in the oversight of the hand count. You ask me how fast or how slow it's going to go. Some of it's going to be dependent upon the people who are asking and observing and participating in the oversight of the recount. So I really can't tell you at the end of the day or at the end of the process what the price tag ends up being, but I can tell you that with all the labor that we need to throw at it, we're running at a run rate of about $21,000 a day.
Are we talking about $21,000 a day? That's 5 days of work, basically 5 or 6.
Again, it could be 10. I mean, it really all depends on what pace that they have. Again, I'm stressing this.
Sure, yeah.
If it's left to us without oversight, without people saying, could you stop? Can we take a look at that one? If we're just banging it out, we're going to go as fast as we can.
Mhm.
But I'm assuming that because people are wanting to inspect, certain aspects of the
Mhm.
election, that
Mhm.
some of this is going to slow down.
Right. So I'm
And
also
so,
thinking about the pandemic impact, where it's been hard in general to get enough labor to do anything in a timely fashion. That's why that was my thought. I don't know if that would be the case here, but it's a
well,
thought.
what I've done, because we were anticipating the possibility. We were hearing as I certified the election that there might be the possibility of a request. So we held, because we have to go through a 1% manual tally, so which is the same process. Again, I want to stress that we do this. This isn't something new to us. We do this with every one of our elections. So that we have a trained team, of people that have already gone through it not too long ago, a week or two ago, when we did the 1% manual tally, and we held on to that staff. I have to. It's. I'll again dive into some of the logistics of running an election office like this. My permanent staff, our permanent staff is less than 50 people.
Hmm.
Um, but when we get into a large election, we hire on around 350 temporary staff, and we train them up to do all the different roles, from translation to distributing equipment to testing equipment. So we bring in a we bring in a temporary staff that is with us for for several months. We have a number of people who are repeats. We like the people who we've trained already, and we can bring them in. They can hit the ground running. Um, but that staff that is highly trained, they've just gone through it a couple weeks ago. We held on to that staff so that we would be ready for this. So we were able to hold on to the staff. The timing is good for us, because if it was a couple months later, if which is not possible by election code. So they've got 5 days to request a recount from the time I certify. So we held on to that staff. They're available. They'll be here on site on Friday, ready to go.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, no, we're good to go. Like I said, this is all part of the democratic process. This is part of the
Yeah.
election code. Uh, we are built to do this. The team is absolutely ready to do it, and it's everybody's right to ask for it.
Can you explain to people that this is asking for recount is not, and it's far different from the GOP habit of saying, "Well, you didn't win the election," and all this jazz that's going on, right? This is not that.
No, this is again. In general, somebody, now I know we have another county, I believe one of our neighboring counties, that even has a much closer race. I don't know if you've heard about that, Zenny, but I heard
Hmm.
that Contra Costa County has had
Yes.
two
Yeah.
races that are extremely close, like I
Yeah.
believe like one vote
Mhm.
apart.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so so this is in general what we're usually seeing the candidate or the campaigns, or whoever it is that's requesting it, is looking to see, usually at the way that we may have interpreted the voter's intent when a voter doesn't necessarily mark the ballot entirely right. So
Hmm.
we see all sorts of different ways, even though we say, and we've all had scantrons all of our life from school, fill in the bubble for, people do a lot of different interesting things. They'll put an X in the bubble. They'll circle the bubble. They'll do all the. We've seen everything, and so we call it taking a look at what was the voter's intent. And we have a training for that. We train the people who do that. It's called adjudication. But when we get into a hand count like this, when somebody's looking at a recount, they're generally looking for those votes that weren't necessarily marked correctly
Mhm.
and the way that it was interpreted. And so they may, we call it challenging the way that we interpreted the vote. So when we're going through the recount, we'll have a stack, we'll have a bin for the people who are there watching, and they'll say, I want to challenge that one. And so then we'll set that vote aside. And at the end of the day, I mean, I've said this to a few of the people asking me. I feel like I'm an NBA referee, right? It's it will come to me. It's not a debate. I'll take a look at what they're challenging, and me and my deputy registrar, the two of us will take a look at it, and we'll make a final ruling. It's not up for discussion, but the hope of the candidate who's going through the recount is to try to find those ballots that there may have been some gray area in the interpretation of the voter intent, and their hope is that they find some votes that will head in their direction. That's generally what a recount is looking at, is to see if there's some ballots that, as I said, the way that they were marked could have been interpreted differently, and to see if they get that extra vote or two or three to head their direction to change the outcome.
Now, this isn't something that tomorrow the public can come down and witness, or can it?
We do have public observation as well. They won't have the same level of access that the people who are involved directly in the recount is, but they can observe. We'll have a place for them to observe. They won't be right on the floor with the recount teams, whereas the parties who are identified as being able to challenge, they'll be actually in the space where we're doing the recount. Those won't be the observers. Those will be, the people who are from the different campaigns who are impacted by the recount.
So they don't have to come down and worry about getting arrested. Because did that happen? And is that your case that happened, or someplace where?
We did unfortunately have an observer who was arrested.
What did they do?
Unfortunately. So I'm not sure that I can really dive into it, but
Okay.
but it was something that did happen, unfortunately.
Is it something where you can post a rule like for risk management and say, "Hey, look, don't feed the birds" or something like that?
Well, so for our observers, we have observer guidelines. They're well detailed guidelines, the do's and don'ts of what you can and cannot do. And every observer gets those guidelines. So it's something that every observer gets. And if somebody does come down to observe the process tomorrow, or as we go forward with, if we go forward with a recount, tomorrow is yet to be seen. The observers will.
Tomorrow, I thought you said it starts tomorrow. Now you're saying it's yet to be seen. You mean are you being jocular in a sense, or what do you mean?
No, I'm not. So all we got the request.
Yeah.
I guess since we'll dive into some of the specifics again, I'm not being jocular.
Okay.
So everybody who submitted a formal request is getting notified that we're prepared to start the recount tomorrow. The recount rules say that we don't proceed with the count on any day if we don't receive a check for the amount of the day. So, everybody's been informed. I hear your interest in doing a recount.
Show me the money.
Exactly. So tomorrow, I believe we've said by 9 o'clock, all of these parties have the opportunity to come in with their $21,000 check for the day, and we're going to take them in the order that they submitted it. The first person who submitted will be the first person, if they show up, that I'll talk to and say, well, do you have a check for $21,000 to get started? And do you understand that each day going forward, on Monday, when we're prepared to go again and continue, you'll have to come in with another check for $21,000. And the election code says if that person doesn't, once we've chosen one, and we only do one recount, so that person who says they're going for it has committed, right? And if they don't show up on the next day, once we've said this is the one who requested, you're officially it. If on Monday they don't come in with a check for 21,000, that's the end of the recount. The recount's over.
If you have 10 people, organizations that have signed up for a recount, can't they just team up and maybe, this person has 21,000, that person has 21,000, and they can pool their resources?
So I can't match make. I have to be neutral. So whatever they do, and I know I'm reading again. This isn't news that I specifically have. I'm reading the same articles everybody else is. I'm understanding that there's some collaboration going on in order to raise the funds for this. It's not something that I orchestrate. They can, however I get a check, I just need to get a check for 21,000 each day.
You just really show me the money. That's
basically it. I mean, that's how it works. That's why I'm saying it's. I have to see what happens tomorrow, because they're all being informed. This is the check you'll have to write if you're the one chosen tomorrow for the recount. And so we'll see if all 10 show up. We'll see who is interested. And then we'll see how we go forward with that.
Tim, this has been epic.
It's been a good TED Talk, Zennie.
Yeah, I can't think of any other word to describe it. Thank you very, very much. We talked 40 minutes, but we're at 1 hour, 35 minutes, and 36 seconds as I keep running my mouth.
All right. Well, I did this with you, Zennie, because I want to demystify this process. I know it can seem very complicated. So I hope this helps.
Yeah, it does, and I want to thank you for agreeing to do it and taking advantage of the value of this kind of media. To be able to allow that a presentation that you can't get in traditional forms of media. This would be a book, of many hundred, 100-something pages at least, and then again, who would read it? Somebody would, but there would be more of a reference, and really, that's in a sense what this is, a reference. And so people can reference it, and you can reference it, and now Google automatically segments these video parts. So there are different parts that will automatically segment. It's quite a value. God bless you for doing it. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
And I want to have you back because I might want to ask you for your opinion of what Georgia's planning. Georgia's actually planning to go ranked choice voting.
Oh, are they? Yeah. I haven't been. My usual stock answer, Zennie, is I specialize in California, which is got enough nuances to keep me busy. But interesting stuff. So again, thank you for having me. Thank you for having a collaborative conversation. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. There's the ones that I like. So yeah. Hey, stick around in the background, Tim. You don't have to do anything. I'll do the magic. Hey, folks. We'll be back with more, and I'm trying to get Dave Cavell, the president liaison, for. Dave's been on for a while, but anyway, he hasn't tweeted in several months, but I got the pipeline going for those of you who've asked. Tim, stick around in the background. Subscribe to Zennie62 on YouTube, and please bookmark OaklandNewsNowBlog.com and our sister blog, OaklandNewsOnline.com too. That ends this broadcast. Tim, stick around. You have to do anything. I'm just working the magic here by pushing a button.